Votes being counted or Democrats stealing the election here?
No. The only votes being counted by the Board of Elections at the Pennsylvania Convention Center are votes cast by eligible voters on or before Election Day.
The president says there's, quote, a mountain of corruption and dishonesty here. Is that true?
No, it's not true.
The president says observers were not allowed in the counting rooms. Is that true?
That's totally untrue.
The president says, quote, bad things happened that our observers were not allowed to see. Is that true?
Absolutely not. We've seen observers from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, from the Trump campaign and from the Biden campaign, more than we've seen our own families, I assure you, over the last couple of weeks.
Now, the critics would say the observers can't really see anything because the place is so big. What would you say about that? I mean, it's like a football field length, and some have binoculars.
Well, it is a big operation inside, and we've arranged it in a way that observers have access to see what's going on. We have it set up completely in accordance with the law, and a federal judge agreed with us on that.
So that we're clear, this is Al Schmidt, Philadelphia's top Republican city commissioner, debunking every single one of Trump and Fox News' lies about election fraud, and doing it on Fox News. And by the way, it's not only this Republican election official who's admitting this. Trump's own campaign in court has admitted the same exact thing that we're hearing here. For example, during a case in Philadelphia over this notion that observers weren't being allowed to see the counting of ballots, the Trump campaign ultimately admitted to the judge that the campaign did, in fact, have campaign officials observing the counting, to which the judge, a George W. Bush appointee, replied, "I'm sorry, then what's your problem?" And you guessed it, they lost that case. Keep in mind too that in all of these rooms, not just the ones in Philadelphia, there are Democratic and Republican officials observing. That is how the process works. That's how it's always worked. So there's a reason that they can make these outlandish claims on Fox News and on Twitter, but when it comes time to actually back them up in court, they fall on their faces. It's because they are lying. In fact, the Trump campaign has gone on to lose 12 cases in court, ranging from more complaints that their observers weren't allowed to watch the ballots getting counted, to pretending that random ballots had come in after the deadline even though they had no proof, to an actual complaint that military ballots were being cast for Joe Biden. That was the complaint here. There was fraud because there's no way a military member could vote for Joe. They literally brought that claim to court. That is the level of delusion being put on display right now. Now, in fairness, I should mention that Republicans did win one single case, and it happened in Pennsylvania, wherein mail-in voters who took advantage of a deadline extension to provide missing proof of identification had their ballots thrown out because the Trump campaign successfully argued that Pennsylvania's Secretary of State overstepped her authority by extending the original November 9th deadline for proof of ID by 3 days. But here's the thing, because this is a narrow ruling and because Biden is up in Pennsylvania by over 50,000 votes, the ruling doesn't change the results, but it does disenfranchise people whose votes were cast. And that is the GOP's goal, to allow as few people as possible to vote. But sure, they're the Patriots. Got it. Ted Cruz even hailed this as a, quote, important legal victory, to which Pennsylvania's Attorney General responded, "Counselor, I figured you knew how to read a judge's order. Let me help you. 1, it's a narrow ruling on very few ballots. 2, it doesn't affect ballots received by 11/6. 3, none of this changes the election results. Now I know why they call you Lying Ted. Leave Pennsylvania alone." Because if there is one thing Ted Cruz has a penchant for, it's publicly embarrassing himself. So Trump and Republicans can continue propping up these absurd claims, but they're only decimating what shred of credibility they had left. All because they're too deluded to accept the reality that Donald Trump has lost and Joe Biden will be sworn in on January 20th, 2021. If you like this video, please check out my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deep dive into the week's most important stories and interview major players in politics, including Kamala Harris, Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Swalwell, Mary Trump, Al Franken, Cory Booker, and many, many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.